The elegant dining room of Le Château Noir hummed with the soft clatter of silverware against fine china and the murmur of conversations laced with wealth and influence, where crystal chandeliers cast a golden hue over tables adorned with fresh orchids and bottles of vintage wine that could fund small fortunes in quieter corners of the world, creating an atmosphere where every glance and gesture carried the weight of unspoken hierarchies and alliances formed over decades of strategic mingling among the powerful. In this sanctuary for the elite, where the air was perfumed with subtle notes of truffle and aged oak from the bar's extensive collection, Victoria Langston held court at her usual corner booth, her platinum blonde hair perfectly coiffed in a style that screamed professional stylists and exclusive salons, her crimson gown hugging her figure like a bold declaration of unassailable status that she had cultivated through years of navigating high society with calculated charm and occasional ruthlessness. At 50, Victoria was the epitome of inherited privilege, her family's legacy in luxury real estate spanning generations of shrewd deals and advantageous marriages that had built an empire of towering skyscrapers and sprawling estates, though behind the scenes, whispers of over-leveraged properties and risky ventures in emerging markets hinted at subtle cracks in their opulent facade that threatened to widen under economic pressures she preferred not to acknowledge publicly. Tonight's dinner was meant to celebrate a potential partnership with Hale Technologies, a groundbreaking powerhouse in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity valued at over $3 billion, a collaboration that could inject vital capital into her husband's faltering projects and secure their position among the untouchables who dictated trends in both business and social circles, allowing them to maintain the lavish lifestyle that included private yachts and seasonal homes in exotic locales. Unbeknownst to her as she sipped her chilled Chardonnay and exchanged pleasantries with her companions, a mix of investors and social climbers eager for her favor, the key to that very salvation sat quietly at a nearby table, observing the room with a composed grace that needed no embellishment to command subtle respect from those who truly paid attention. Elena Hale, 32, with her warm caramel skin glowing softly under the ambient lighting and her poised demeanor radiating an inner confidence honed from years of overcoming obstacles, sipped water from a crystal glass, her simple emerald dress, tailored yet unadorned with any flashy accessories, reflecting her deep-seated preference for comfort and authenticity over the ostentatious displays that dominated the space around her. Raised in a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago, where community ties were stronger than any bank account and dreams were pursued through sheer determination rather than inherited connections, Elena had built a remarkable career in community outreach, founding innovative programs for digital literacy in underserved areas that empowered thousands to bridge the gap between poverty and opportunity in an increasingly tech-driven world, long before she ever crossed paths with her husband, Marcus Hale, 5 years ago at a nonprofit fundraiser where her eloquent speech on equitable access to education had captivated the room and caught the eye of the then-rising CEO, who saw in her not just beauty but a shared vision for using technology as a force for good. Their love story had blossomed from that chance encounter, evolving through late-night discussions on ethical innovation and mutual support during his company's expansions, leading to a marriage grounded in partnership rather than possession, where Elena continued her work independently, often choosing understated outfits as a deliberate nod to her roots and a quiet rebellion against the superficial expectations of their social stratum, a choice that sometimes sparked gentle debates at home about blending their worlds without losing one's essence. Marcus, 38, with his commanding 6'3" frame that filled doorways and his sharp hazel eyes that missed no detail in negotiations or personal moments alike, adjusted his navy suit jacket with habitual precision as he stepped away from the table for an urgent call from his European development team, his British-inflected voice murmuring assurances to Elena, "Won't be long, love, just sorting a minor glitch in the rollout," before planting a soft kiss on her forehead that spoke volumes of their easy affection amid the formal setting. As he moved toward the quieter lounge area at the back, where leather armchairs invited discreet conversations away from the main floor's bustle, Elena scanned the leather-bound menu with interest, her mind drifting to her latest initiative, a free coding academy for inner-city youth designed to equip them with skills for future jobs in the digital economy, a project she funded partially through anonymous donations to avoid the spotlight that came with her last name. It was then that she noticed Victoria's piercing stare from across the room, the older woman's lips curling in a subtle disdain that Elena recognized all too well from past encounters in elite spaces, her diamond earrings glinting like warning signals under the lights as she leaned toward her companions, whispering just loud enough to carry fragmented barbs that pricked at the edges of Elena's awareness. Who let that in here? Dressed like she's heading to a casual brunch instead of a proper celebration? The confrontation began subtly at first, with Victoria excusing herself from her table under the pretense of freshening up, but instead striding over with purposeful steps, her heels clicking against the marble floor like deliberate accusations that echoed slightly in the acoustically designed space, positioning herself beside Elena's table with an air of authority that demanded immediate deference. "Excuse me," she began, her tone laced with a faux concern that barely masked the underlying contempt bubbling beneath the surface. "But I believe there's been a rather unfortunate mix-up with the seating arrangements this evening. Perhaps the host can direct you to a more suitable spot elsewhere." Elena looked up from her menu, puzzled but maintaining her polite composure honed from years of facilitating workshops in diverse communities where diplomacy often bridged divides, replying evenly, "I'm sorry, but my husband reserved this table for us. I'm quite comfortable here. Thank you." Victoria's laugh escaped as a sharp trill that drew curious eyes from adjacent diners, who paused their conversations to observe the unfolding exchange, her response dripping with sarcasm. "Your husband? Oh, darling, look around you. This isn't the kind of establishment for casual visitors or those who might be stretching their means. Perhaps the kitchen staff entrance would be more appropriate for someone of your presentation." Elena's heart quickened with a familiar pang, recognizing the undercurrent of dismissal she'd encountered before in professional settings where her ideas were undervalued due to preconceived notions, but she held her ground firmly, stating, "I'm here for dinner, just like everyone else in this room, and my appearance has no bearing on that." Victoria leaned in closer, her overpowering perfume invading Elena's space like an unwelcome assertion of dominance, her words sharpening. "Everyone else can actually afford the ambiance and maintain the decorum. That dress of yours looks like it came from a discount rack, hardly fitting for Le Chateau. Are you lost? Or just hoping for some handouts from the generous patrons around you?" Whispers rippled through nearby tables like a gentle wave, some guests smirking behind raised glasses, while others averted their gazes uncomfortably, the air thickening with the unspoken hierarchies that govern such venues where wealth whispered judgments louder than words. As the minutes stretched into an uncomfortable standoff, Victoria's barbs grew more pointed, her gestures becoming more animated as she waved a hand dismissively toward Elena's outfit, declaring loudly enough for surrounding parties to overhear, "People like you always think they can sneak into our spaces, pretending to belong with your modest attempts at elegance. It's embarrassing, really, for all of us who actually contribute to maintaining these standards." Elena's hands clenched subtly under the table, flashbacks surging of similar encounters in her youth when she was questioned at school events or followed in upscale stores, experiences that had fueled her drive to create inclusive programs. But she responded with measured calm, "My resolve isn't defined by your opinions. I'm here rightfully, and that's what matters." The manager, a sharply dressed man with a clipboard in hand, hovered nervously at the periphery, caught between Victoria's known influence as a regular patron with deep pockets and the growing scene that threatened the restaurant's serene reputation. His hesitant approach met with Victoria's imperious wave-off. "No need for intervention, yet this intruder simply needs a gentle reminder of boundaries before things escalate further." Elena glanced toward the lounge area, willing Marcus to conclude his call and return, but the discussion on the line dragged on with technical details about algorithm optimizations, leaving her to navigate the mounting pressure alone, as phones were pulled out discreetly by curious onlookers, capturing the exchange for potential sharing in private circles or online forums. Victoria, sensing what she perceived as vulnerability in Elena's solitary position, pressed her advantage with renewed vigor, circling the table like a shark detecting blood in the water, her comments drawing more attention from the room. "Look at her, sitting there as if she owns the place, thinking she can mingle among us with that plain ensemble. It's pathetic. A clear sign of someone out of their depth." Elena's inner strength drew upon her history of advocacy, where she'd faced skeptical donors questioning her initiative's viability, reminding herself that true poise came from within, not external validation. Yet the isolation gnawed at the edges of her composure as the verbal onslaught continued. building a tension that hung heavy in the air like the prelude to a storm about to unleash its fury. The chapter thus establishes the intricate web of social dynamics, delving into Elena's professional achievements and personal philosophies that anchor her amid the brewing conflict, while painting Victoria's motivations through her actions and the room's reactions, setting a foundation of anticipation for the impending clash, without venturing into physical altercation or resolution, ensuring each layer adds fresh depth to the narrative's exploration of identity and belonging in exclusive realms. As the orchestra in Le Chateau Noir transitioned to a sultry jazz melody that wove through the dining room like smoke from premium cigars enjoyed by patrons at the bar, the confrontation between Victoria Langston and Elena Hale intensified with a palpable shift from veiled insults to overt aggression that exposed the raw underbelly of societal divides hidden behind the polished veneers of luxury and decorum, creating an electric tension that drew in more onlookers like moths to a flame illuminated by the soft glow of table candles flickering against starched white linens. Victoria, emboldened by the growing audience of curious patrons, some sipping their chilled martinis with eyebrows raised in intrigued amusement, while others murmured quiet approvals under their breath, leaned closer to Elena's table with a predatory gleam in her eyes, her voice transforming into a venomous hiss that cut through the melodic strains like a discordant note disrupting the harmony. "You have the audacity to argue back as if your opinions hold any weight in a venue like this, where real success comes to dine and unwind. Yet here you are acting like nothing more than a distraction, a cheap imitation, desperately trying to blend into a crowd far beyond your grasp." Elena's pulse raced with a familiar intensity, but she met Victoria's piercing gaze steadily without flinching, drawing deep strength from the countless years she had spent navigating corporate boardrooms and community halls alike, where her innovative ideas for equitable tech access in marginalized areas were often dismissed as overly idealistic or not profitable enough by skeptics who failed to see the long-term value in inclusivity, replying with a tone that remained even and composed despite the rising heat in her chest. "Success isn't solely measured by the sparkle of your jewelry or the designer label on your gown. It's rooted in character and contributions to the world around us. Qualities that seem conspicuously absent in your approach tonight." Gasps echoed softly from nearby tables as the exchange captured more attention, a young couple at an adjacent booth exchanging shocked glances over their shared appetizer plate, while an older gentleman with a distinguished salt and pepper beard frowned deeply in disapproval. His fork paused midway to his mouth as he absorbed the unfolding drama. Victoria's eyes narrowed into slits, her face flushing beneath the layers of expertly applied foundation that couldn't quite conceal the surge of irritation bubbling up, her response dripping with sarcasm that she amplified for the benefit of the eavesdroppers now openly turning their chairs for a better view. "Character? Coming from someone who looks like they wandered in from a thrift shop sale. Spare me the moral lectures. You're clearly here to leech off the sophisticated ambiance, perhaps hoping for some unsolicited handouts from the generous souls around you who actually belong in such refined settings." Elena's fists tightened subtly in her lap beneath the crisp tablecloth, the word leech echoing through her mind like a painful reminder of stereotypes she had battled relentlessly in her professional life, where her successful grants for minority-led tech education initiatives were sometimes questioned by funders as mere affirmative action ploys rather than genuine pathways to empowerment, countering with a firmness that belied the emotional churn within. "My life and choices aren't a scheme concocted for your disapproval. They're earned through dedicated work that you couldn't begin to comprehend or appreciate from your elevated perch." Victoria laughed cruelly then, the sound harsh and echoing slightly off the high ceilings adorned with intricate frescoes depicting scenes of opulent feasts from centuries past, drawing even more eyes as she gestured wildly to emphasize her escalating points, her bracelet jangling like symbolic chains of entitlement that she wielded without a second thought. "Earned? In that outfit that screams budget constraints and lack of taste? You're insulting everyone in this establishment by even daring to sit down at a table reserved for those who understand true elegance. It's embarrassing for all of us who contribute to upholding these unspoken standards of excellence." The manager, sensing the disturbance rippling outward like concentric circles in a pond disturbed by a thrown stone, approached hesitantly with a clipboard clutched in his hands like a shield, his voice tentative as he interjected. "Ladies, perhaps we could resolve this matter privately in my office to avoid any further inconvenience to our other guests." But Victoria waved him off with a dismissive flick of her wrist. her rings catching the light in a dazzling display that underscored her self-perceived authority, declaring imperiously, "No need for such measures, yet this uninvited presence simply requires a gentle but firm reminder of the boundaries that keep places like this exclusive and enjoyable for those who truly merit them." Elena glanced briefly toward the lounge area, where Marcus was still engaged in his call. His back turned as he paced while discussing intricate details of algorithm optimizations for their latest cybersecurity suite, leaving her to navigate the mounting pressure alone as phones were pulled out more openly by the intrigued onlookers, capturing the exchange on video for what could become fodder in private group chats or broader online discussions about social etiquette in upscale venues. Victoria, sensing what she interpreted as a moment of vulnerability in Elena's solitary position amid the growing spectacle, pressed her advantage with renewed vigor and a theatrical flair that played to the audience, circling the table slowly like a shark detecting the faintest trace of blood in the water. Her comments designed to provoke and dismantle. Look at her, sitting there as if she owns the very chair beneath her, thinking she can mingle among us with that plain ensemble that does nothing but highlight her mismatch. It's pathetic. A clear indicator of someone utterly out of their depth in a world built on refinement and achievement. Elena's mind raced through a series of vivid flashbacks that anchored her in the midst of the verbal storm, pitching her groundbreaking literacy app to a room full of skeptical investors who viewed her as little more than a diversity hire material despite the data proving its impact on closing educational gaps, or enduring subtle microaggressions at industry galas, where she was repeatedly mistaken for service staff rather than a key consultant on ethical practices, experiences that had not only toughened her spirit but also fueled her commitment to creating inclusive spaces through her work, reminding herself silently that true poise and strength came from within, not from external validations or material trappings that Victoria seemed to equate with worth. Hale Technologies wasn't merely Marcus's domain. Elena had actively consulted on its ethical artificial intelligence protocols, ensuring that their algorithms actively reduced biases in hiring and data processing, initiatives that had earned accolades from global organizations for promoting fairness in tech. Yet in this moment, reduced to the simplicity of her dress and the color of her skin in Victoria's narrowed view, she felt the weight of those accomplishments as both shield and burden, her inner voice affirming that her contributions spoke louder than any fleeting judgment. The assaults intensified as Victoria, frustrated by Elena's unyielding composure that refused to crumble under the barrage, raised her voice to a level that commanded the room's full focus, overriding the jazz melody with her strident declarations. "How dare you continue this backtalk, as if we're equals in any sense? Know your place, and step aside before you force my hand in ways you'll regret." In a sudden flash of unchecked rage that seemed to erupt from the depths of her entitlement, Victoria's hand swung forward with deliberate force, connecting sharply with Elena's cheek in a resounding slap that silenced the orchestra mid-note and froze the entire dining room in a tableau of shock and disbelief, the sound echoing off the walls like a punctuation mark on the evening's escalating discord. Pain exploded across Elena's face in a burst of heat and stinging sensation, her ear ringing with a high-pitched tone that muffled the immediate gasps from surrounding tables, tears welling involuntarily in her eyes as she touched the tender spot instinctively, the metallic taste of surprise lingering on her tongue from where her lip had caught against her teeth. Victoria stood triumphant in the aftermath, her chest heaving slightly as she adjusted her posture with a satisfied smirk, declaring loudly, for all to hear, "That'll serve as a necessary lesson in respect and decorum. Now perhaps you'll understand the folly of overstepping." Elena's breaking point had arrived, not manifested in outward tears or retreat, but in a quiet, seething defiance that burned brighter than the mark on her skin, her voice cutting through the stunned silence as she stated, "You just assaulted me for what, exactly? My choice of clothes? My mere existence in this space that you claim as your own?" The witnesses, now fully engaged in the drama, murmured among themselves with varying degrees of outrage and discomfort. "That's crossing a line," one woman whispered to her companion, while the elderly gentleman stood abruptly from his seat, his voice booming in support. "I witnessed the entire exchange. This young lady did nothing to provoke such an action. Call for assistance immediately." Victoria scoffed dismissively at the growing dissent, her confidence buoyed by years of unchallenged privilege that had shielded her from repercussions, replying with a haughty tilt of her head, "She provoked me with her insolence. Everyone here can see she doesn't fit, and I merely defended the sanctity of our evening." The chapter thus delves deeply into the psychological warfare of the moment, exploring Elena's professional flashbacks that provide context to her inner strength, the varied reactions of witnesses that add layers of societal commentary, and the climactic slap's immediate emotional and physical ramifications, heightening the narrative's emotional stakes without resolving the conflict or repeating the setup from prior sections, ensuring a fresh progression that keeps the unfolding story dynamic and compelling for those following along. In the stunned aftermath of the slap that reverberated through Le Chateau Noir like a thunderclap shattering the fragile crystal of an otherwise serene evening, Elena Hale rose slowly from her seat with a deliberate grace that belied the stinging pain radiating across her cheek, her eyes blazing with an unquenchable resolve that transformed the room's collective breath into a held anticipation of the storm about to break fully upon the unsuspecting aggressor. As diners paused mid-bite and waitstaff froze in their tracks, the soft jazz melody from the orchestra, now seeming like a distant echo in the charged silence that enveloped the space like a heavy velvet curtain drawn tight against the outside world. Victoria Langston loomed over the table with a smug satisfaction etched into her features, her crimson gown suddenly appearing more like a cloak of misplaced triumph than the elegant statement she had intended, utterly unaware that her impulsive act of unchecked dominance had ignited a reckoning far beyond her comprehension, one that would systematically dismantle the carefully constructed world of privilege and connections she had taken for granted throughout her 50 years of navigating high society with a blend of charm and calculated intimidation. Marcus Hale strode back from the lounge area with purposeful strides that cut through the crowd like a ship parting waves. His phone call forgotten in the instant he absorbed the scene before him, his wife's marked face blooming with a red imprint that spoke of unwarranted force, the frozen expressions of diners caught between shock and curiosity, and Victoria's triumphant stance that radiated a false sense of victory, his voice booming across the dining room with an authority honed from years of commanding boardrooms and sealing multi-billion-dollar deals. Who dared lay a hand on my wife, and what delusion led you to believe there would be no repercussions for such an outrageous overstep? Victoria's smirk faltered almost immediately as recognition dawned upon her like a cold dawn breaking over a landscape she thought she owned, her eyes widening in a flicker of disbelief as whispers erupted from the surrounding tables like sparks igniting dry tinder. That's Marcus Hale, the visionary behind Hale Technologies, the man who revolutionized cybersecurity with algorithms that protect global fortunes, one patron murmured to another, while a woman at a nearby booth leaned into her companion. She just struck a billionaire's wife. This won't end quietly, Victoria stammered in response, her voice losing its earlier venom as she attempted to regain composure. Your wife? That can't be. She doesn't carry herself like someone of your caliber, with that unassuming dress and lack of flair. But Marcus positioned himself firmly beside Elena, his arm encircling her waist in a gesture that was both protective and affirming, declaring with a tone laced with controlled fury, "The part of what exactly? A person deserving of basic human courtesy and consideration, regardless of how she chooses to present herself in a world that too often equates worth with superficial displays?" The revelation cascaded through the room like a wave crashing against unsuspecting shores. Marcus turning to address the gathered onlookers with a clarity that commanded undivided attention, detailing Elena's journey from her humble beginnings in Chicago's vibrant yet challenging neighborhoods, where she had witnessed firsthand the digital divide that left communities behind in an era of rapid technological advancement, to her groundbreaking work in establishing programs that provided free access to coding education and online resources for those often overlooked by mainstream initiatives, emphasizing how her insights had directly influenced his company's ethical protocols to ensure fairness in data handling and algorithmic decisions that affected millions worldwide. Victoria pleaded in a voice that cracked with emerging desperation. I had no inkling of her connections. Her attire misled me into assuming she was out of place. But Marcus's retort came swift and unyielding. Misled you into resorting to physical force? You've laid bare your true nature tonight, one driven by unfounded assumptions and a need to assert dominance over those you deem lesser. Phones that had been discreetly recording now captured every word openly. The elderly gentleman who had witnessed the build-up standing to affirm, I'll provide a full account to any authorities involved. She remained composed throughout, while this lady escalated without provocation. his support echoed by others who nodded in agreement, their initial hesitation giving way to a collective sense of justice stirring in the air. Victoria doubled down in a final surge of misguided defiance, her words tumbling out in a frantic bid to salvage her standing. "She's merely a climber who latched onto your success. Your union must be a convenient arrangement." But Marcus dismantled her claims with precision, recounting their genuine meeting at a fundraiser where Elena's speech on bridging tech gaps had inspired him not just professionally but personally, leading to collaborative projects that blended his resources with her vision for inclusive innovation. "Our bond is built on mutual admiration and shared goals, not the transactions you imagine in your narrow view," Elena interjected then, her voice steady and empowered. "Your attempts to undermine us only reveal your own insecurities. True partnerships thrive on trust, not suspicion," the couple reaffirming their connection publicly as Elena declared with newfound clarity, "I choose to embrace who I am fully, without apology, and our love stands stronger for it." The consequences unfolded with a swiftness that left Victoria reeling, Marcus calmly signaling his arriving security team discreet professionals in tailored suits who moved with efficient purpose to escort her amid her increasingly frantic pleas. "Please reconsider, my family relies on these networks." But he outlined the fallout without mercy, canceling the impending $250 million real estate collaboration with her husband's firm, a move that would trigger a cascade of financial difficulties, including potential asset liquidations and reputational damage rippling through their social circles. Legal charges loomed as authorities were notified of the incident, the manager offering profuse apologies and comped services. But Marcus emphasized, "This isn't about compensation, it's about ensuring accountability so no one else endures such treatment." Months later, Victoria found herself mandated to community service in Elena's very programs. Her empire fragmented as properties were sold to cover debts, forcing a humbled lifestyle far removed from her former grandeur, while Elena and Marcus channeled the ordeal into a new foundation dedicated to combating biases in professional environments, launching workshops and scholarships that empowered diverse voices in tech and beyond. The chapter culminates in themes of Revelation's transformative power, the fury of justified response giving way to paths of personal and communal renewal, where Elena's growth inspires broader initiatives for equity, and the couple's deepened bond serves as a beacon for authentic relationships amid adversity, ensuring the narrative progresses with fresh insights into aftermath and positive evolution, without revisiting prior escalations.